Oh, hello. Welcome in, everyone. The Fantasy Life Show. We are live right now. And of course, you already know what we're doing. It is time for those instant reactions to night one of the NFL draft. Thank you so much for joining us right here. Kendall Valenzuela. I can never do this alone. I get to be with the two greatest guys ever. We got Ian Hartitz here with us, Dwain McFarland to react to us. How you guys doing? Dwain, how's it going? I'll start with you.
I'm doing absolutely great, Kendall. I mean, we're talking about NFL draft picks. This is like the official look. Free agency starts it, but like this is really like where we turn the page, right? And we start looking at, okay, what are these teams really going to look like? What do these teams care about the most? Where are they going to really invest with their draft capital? So yeah, been working on projections all night, been updating the supermodel. Can't wait to talk about it with you guys.
There we go. And Ian, I'm assuming you're good because you're a Buckeyes fan and you didn't hate the Cowboys pick. So you're in a good mood as well.
Got the offensive line. I made a very ill-advised, silly bet on Twitter that I would run a marathon if the Cowboys drafted Hampton at 12, and they did not. So yes, Kendall, life is good indeed.
There we go. Well, Dwain, you mentioned your projections and everything. I want to remind everyone, you can find that at fantasylife.com. Before we get started, we've got an early bird special going on. So use that code EARLY25, EARLY25, gets you 25% off your first Fantasy Life Plus subscription for a year. So again, that's going on right now at fantasylife.com. Dwain's got the projections live. The supermodel is there. You know, Thor 500, everything you need to continue winning this offseason is at fantasylife.com. EARLY25 is that promo code, so get on in there. All right, let's just dive right in, guys, with everything that we saw tonight. Let's start off with the most obvious pick that we had, which was Cam Ward, Dwain, going to the Tennessee Titans. Round one, pick one. Again, the worst kept secret in the NFL. What do you think about him? Like projections wise, fantasy football wise, doesn't have a ton to work with over there, but he was, again, the overall, consensus QB1 coming into this draft.
Yeah, I mean, well, you've got Calvin Ridley there. Kendall, we've got somebody that used to play for the Seahawks that I think you liked a lot that they signed. But yeah, Tyler Lockett.
The graveyard.
But look, it's not a great supporting cast, but Calvin Ridley's pretty good. Here's the thing, like, Tennessee had to take a quarterback, right? They're just a team that's in need of the quarterback. So it's a situation where Cam Ward had he gone into the draft last year, which he actually tried to do, and they told him, hey, you probably shouldn't. You should go back to school. It's going to be better for you. Well, he really did parlay that into something huge here, getting to be the first pick off the board for the Titans tonight. Look, Will Levis, we knew was not the answer. So getting to move over to Cam Ward is a plus. Now, look, Cam Ward's not like a scrambler like some of the historical kinds like we think. He's not your Jaden Daniels, somebody like that. But he's a guy that can give you like 20 yards rushing on the ground, Kendall. Threw for over 300 yards per game each of his last 2 years. So he's got some upside in the passing game as well. So I think it's going to be a tough rookie year for Cam Ward as far as fantasy goes, just because he's like not enough of a rusher given the surrounding cast. So not somebody I'm going to be ultimately targeting a lot, but he is someone that can grow. And I'll be really excited to see what do they do with the rest of their picks. Maybe they upgrade that receiving room for him early tomorrow in the draft.
Yeah. Ian, what were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I hope they do as well, Dwain, because they actually don't have a third rounder. And I mean, we've talked about this wide receiver class being a bit top heavy as it is. So maybe, get that Washington State reunion going with Kyle Williams, perhaps. Crazier things have happened there. But yeah, it's going to be a rough year one. I mean, think about how much better I think we kind of all felt about Caleb Williams and Drake May as prospects. And look how they went, in similar offensive environments as I believe what, we're going to see Ward facing in Tennessee. Because in addition to Calvin Ridley, Van Jefferson, Tyler Lockett, not exactly blowing anyone away. We also have PFF's rating 28th ranked offensive line. Not sure, Mr. Moore and Zeitler are going to be, the sort of free agency additions that completely turn that unit around. So right now, Fantasy Life consensus rankings on fantasylife.com. We have them coming in about QB 28, again, behind guys like Geno Smith and Matthew Stafford. So Titans fans, you got a potential franchise quarterback. Life should be good in the future, but for 2025 purposes, Kendall, hard to be too excited.
Yeah, well, it's okay. We can talk about Tyler Lockett if you want, if we want to go there. I hope you, projected him, Dwain, to do a little bit better. Does it do anything for you, when you look at this again, Cam Ward, Calvin Ridley, wide receiver 40 in 2024. It wasn't great, Dwain. Does this do anything for him for you?
Yeah, no, look, again, like Cam Ward was really good the last 2 years of college. I mean, that's what he has going for him. But I mean, right now for the projections, I've got him projected for 15.9 fantasy points per game, Kendall. That comes in 26 right now. In our projections, I do have him projected to start all the games almost. I'm giving him 16 and only one to Will Levis. And that's, I give all quarterbacks at least one game off due to injury. So it's really just due to that, or I would have him playing all 17 games. I've got him with a little bit, of rushing upside. I've got him projected for 20.6 rushing yards per game. So, I mean, he could have some games where he gives you a little bit of a boom because he does more than that rushing, or he gives you a rushing touchdown and happens to be one of those games where he throws for 250 yards and 2 passing touchdowns. I'm not saying you won't have some spikes. I think it's just going to be tough for him to be consistent, given the fact that Calvin Ridley, really more of a borderline wide receiver 2. He's a wide receiver 2 in NFL terms, right? In fantasy, he's more of a wide receiver 3 for us right now, but they don't have a clear-cut high-end wide receiver 1 to go with Calvin Ridley. But if they did add someone else that was kind of even in Ridley's ilk, maybe they grab a Luther Burden, someone like that, to be a playmaker for them early tomorrow in round 2. Like Ian said, they don't have that round 3 pick. We would feel a little bit better, but even then, like, we're probably still looking at him at max as like a top 24 quarterback, maybe 23, 22. I could see you if you wanted. You just get down to some of the old dudes you don't want to take anymore, and you're just like, I'm just gonna throw a dart at Cam Ward. I think it's fine, like, once you get to that point in your draft, but I really do think it's hard to project him as being anything more than a low-end QB2.
Ian, it seems like he was one of the guys too. Like, he just needs to learn how to accept the good routine plays rather than kind of going for that risk that we saw in college. But we had actually a lot of Dynasty questions about him in Dynasty rookie drafts, from SiriusXM. Where would you kind of slot him in there if you needed a quarterback this season? If you're, kind of in there wondering what you should do with these quarterbacks, where would you kind of take him in Dynasty?
For Superflex leagues, I mean, look, we're looking at someone, I believe, who obviously Ashton Jeanty 101. If you want to go ahead and take Hunter and just everything, we're about to talk about with him here in a few minutes at 102, that's fine. But I think 103 for Ward, honestly, could be right there in his wheelhouse. We'll see where someone like Jalen Milroe ends up going. He's going to be the most fantasy-friendly quarterback of the bunch. But with Ward, again, I mean, I like how Thor actually pointed out how if you combine last year's quarterback class with this one, still would have come out as his QB6. And as we saw last year, we had 6 really freaking good quarterbacks come out. So I do think that some of the comps that we have seen for Cam Ward, Jordan Love, Geno Smith, guys that have put forward legit quarterback 1 seasons in Fantasyland are on the table for Ward. Again, just could be a bit tough here for 2025. So Kendall, I've been, one of these people where I've had the dynasty leagues where you think, I don't need a quarterback in round 1 or round 2. And you end up having this just horrible 2 or 3 year stretch where you're trying to get that position right. So never again, I tell myself right now. So again, if I did have a top 5 dynasty pick, definitely wouldn't be letting Ward get beyond that.
Listen to Ian Hartitz, everyone. He's pointing right at you and saying, don't make that mistake that he did. Let's continue on. Let's get to, this is where it gets fun. No offense, Cam Ward, but for fantasy football purposes, I know everyone has questions, Dwayne, on Travis Hunter and the projections that you have for him, because this was one of the big starts of the night. The Jaguars did trade up to the number 2 pick to get wide receiver cornerback Travis Hunter out of Colorado, the 2-way star. Looks like they believe that he can change the direction of this franchise and, potentially like the whole sport. I mean, he's being comped to Shohei Ohtani for everything that it's worth. So curious for you, we did get tweets after from Adam Schefter saying that they will onboard him by giving him a heavy dose of the wide receiver position while still playing him at his more natural position on defense. Projection-wise and just overall, what do you think of this move, Travis Hunter to the Jacksonville Jaguars?
Yeah, I think this is very bullish, right? We've got Liam Cohen arriving on the scene. You've got the new GM. They're coming out and they're already saying they want to really play him as a wide receiver. They want to use him a lot that way early in the year. And that was our big question. Like, what's that route participation going to be? And Kendall, you did a great job. You had an article where you wrote this up. We didn't have the Jaguars in play, as one of the teams that we could be talking about here with Liam Cohen. So I think that looking at the landing spot and the way that they think about offense is really good for Travis Hunter, because he was a unique prospect in the way that I had to think about ultimately handling his draft capital in the supermodel, because most guys, it's easy. They just, wherever they go, whatever their pick is, that's how I handle the draft capital. And it's really like the Jimmy Johnson trade chart. So like the higher you go, right, there's this bigger drop off, right, from the top picks towards the middle of the first round. And then things eventually flatten out around the end of the second round. And with Hunter, I was like, man, like if I give him second pick and give him all the credit for it, he immediately grades as high as Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jamar Chase and Malik Neighbors, the 3 best guys ever. So I'm giving him like 80% of that still. Like it was 67%, but I upped it because I think this is a bullish landing spot. So it's kind of tricky, but he right now grades out as the 5th best wide receiver prospect ever in the supermodel because of this landing spot and the fact that he went number 2 overall. If I gave him all the credit, he would actually get a 100 in the supermodel if he gets everything for his draft capital. So if he came out and he suddenly played 90% wide receiver, it would be absolutely huge for him. But I'm going to project him right now at 75. And that's probably not going to make people super excited, but it's one of these things that it's tough. If he is still going to be playing some defense, like, can I project him reasonably, to come out here and play 90% of the routes? Like, I don't think I can do that. Like, I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but by doing that, Kendall, and then I also gave him a pretty strong targets per route run, 21%, knowing that we've got Brian Thomas Jr. there, right, who I've already got projected for 25%. Yeah. If you look at where he comes out, Kendall, right now I've got Travis Hunter projected for 63 receptions, 773 yards, and almost 5 receiving touchdowns. He comes out to wide receiver 50 in PPR. So, and that's in points per game. So people, like, they're going to see that and they're going to think, oh man, like, I'm just not nuts about that. You're going to have to draft him higher than that. But here's the thing. Like, if I'm wrong and they really ultimately decide they're only going to play him on defense like 30% of the time, and they're going to play him on offense like 85, 90% of the time, things really change. So if I take that 75% and let's just say I change it to 90, Brian Thomas Jr. is sitting at a 95% route participation. Let's say they use him that way. That really, really, really changes the way things look for his outlook. Now he's moving into being a borderline wide receiver 2. So it's just hard to say like how much playing time he's going to get. So I think that's the big question for Ian. Where would you put this? Like if you were the guy in charge of doing the projections, because honestly, it's one of the hardest guys I've ever had to handle as far as figuring out how much playing time we can give him on offense.
We'll see how you handle it, Dwayne. Then we'll have to call the bull. If you don't pass this test this year, we'll see what happens. But I don't love those scenarios you're giving me right now. We're saying best case, we're looking at a borderline wide receiver 2, and worst case, probably going to be more of a wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5. I mean, we were talking briefly before the show, and I said this sounds a lot like Rome Odunze, where we all really like the talent. And I know they're not, comparable play style necessarily or anything, but Rome, fellow top 10 pick, someone everyone really freaking liked coming out. And what happened? Had a lot of target competition, had a quarterback who wasn't able to perform at a very high level consistently throughout the season, which honestly is again starting to look a bit more like Travis. So I do think we're going to have to draft him kind of in that high end wide receiver 3 range. I mean, right now, if you want to check out our rankings, we have guys like Marvin Harrison Jr., Cortland Sutton, DK Metcalf, kind of around that wide receiver 2 borderline. If you wanted to put Hunter around that range, I think that's probably about right. But man, Dwayne, again, we have guys like Jameson Williams, Jordan Addison, Rome Odunze himself, Jalen Waddle. I mean, I'm not saying Hunter can't outperform them, but I think it's going to be close with that. And God forbid we do just see this phenomenon that seems to happen a lot in drafts where rookies tend to get pushed up because everyone's excited. We've been talking about these guys for months on end. I mean, Kendall, like if we do end up seeing Travis Hunter as this wide receiver 20, wide receiver 21, would you plan on drafting him a lot?
Yes. I absolutely would.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the same for everyone though, because I go back to Dwayne and Thor and all their pre-draft process and all that work, and they say, well, he would be the wide receiver 1 in the supermodel and everything if we got told that he was going to play primarily wide receiver. So to me, already I've been kind of taking him on underdog because I know Pete Overzet did a great write-up in one of the Fantasy Life newsletters saying that he is going to be a steal if we do get that news. And if you don't, then you just kind of say, all right, he's already going late in drafts now. He's going to be jumping up, but I 100% would. And I'm thinking you guys would both do the same thing.
Yeah, you're betting on the upside. And again, in the scenario I gave, right? It's like I just bumped his route participation up to 90%, but I didn't like bump up his targets per route run. Like there's other components that go higher and higher. So I do think that if like he ran really pure and they suddenly played him 90% of the time, like I think he would have a shot at being, a high-end wide receiver 2, low-end wide receiver 1. Like, is that where I would make my bet? Like, it's going to be tough. You're also competing with, Brian Thomas Jr. But I do think, like, a little bit different because for Rome, he was having to compete with DJ Moore, plus he had Keenan Allen there, right? So he really had two guys in that 25% target share range, at least for Travis Hunter. He's only got to deal with Brian Thomas Jr. And actually, I think when you look at Travis Hunter, slightly better prospect than Rome as well overall. So again, it's tricky. The route participation is the most tricky part of it, but I think he could still pay off if you drafted him as a low-end wide receiver 2. But to Ian's point, I could see him finishing more as a low-end wide receiver 3. He's a risky pick because it's really hard to project. I
just get really excited, Dwayne, when I hear potentially the best wide receiver prospect in the supermodel ever. And it's like, okay, low end wide receiver 2-ish. Again, we were ranking Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr., a little bit ill-advised on the second one, as top 15 players, this time last year. So I do remember, Dwayne, we've done a lot of shows over the last week or two, and there's one of them where I think you were right. If you put him on the Titans, the Browns, maybe not the Giants because of Malik Neighbors, or the Patriots, like, okay, we'd be looking at Hunter as the clear-cut wide receiver 1. We don't have that in Jacksonville. Brian Thomas Jr. certified capital D dog out here, right? So yes, we do have Liam Cohen there, but, it was a fun year. I get that. Are we absolutely positive Liam Cohen is the next Sean McVay? There's a lot of assumptions going on there. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with him, man. But I just know, Dwayne, you told me Trevor Lawrence's passing yards per game number many times over the last year or two, man. I don't think this is as clear-cut of a progression, as great of a talent as Travis Hunter is.
Do you think the risk, though, Ian, outweighs the reward with Travis Hunter? Like right now on Underdog, and everyone knows, like Underdog, we push the wide receivers up way earlier than in most drafts when you look at, ESPN, Yahoo, wherever it is. So wide receiver 35 right now. Does the reward outweigh the risk, though, with him? And you say, hey, I just want to go and get him because there is that potential for him to just be the superstar wide receiver 2 on this team.
If he stays a wide receiver 35, I will take him in every single draft down, man. I just think that's kind of happening because he was in the 50s because everyone thought he was going to be a full-time cornerback. He's slowly but surely risen up, and I'm guessing some of the news we're hearing from Liam Cohen and Adam Schefter and these other guys are probably going to push him up closer to wide receiver 20. So, again, I don't want to be the guy that completely fades the number 2 freaking overall pick, Heisman winner. Again, the stats speak for himself, but I think that borderline wide receiver 2, I'm not going to be sprinting to the podium to take him every single time I'm in a best ball draft.
And then, Dwayne, the flip side of that is with Brian Thomas Jr., we do say, hey, we don't really know what the outlook is going to be for Travis Hunter, right? Cornerback, wide receiver. But does that move him at all for you?
No, I'm not moving Brian Thomas Jr. I think there's enough room for these two guys to completely dominate. There's just nobody else. We've got Gabe Davis. Again, Gabe Davis. I left a dramatic pause there. We got Diami Brown. You guys probably don't want me to make more pauses. I could have more. Parker going. Washington. There's something as what this sounds like something Ian would say. There's something called a Cephas on the depth chart. Brenton Strange. Who Ian loves to. I think actually you did say that about a Cephas before, but it might have been this guy's brother. This is Josh Cephas, not Quintez Cephas. Wow. Brenton Strange. A round 2 tight end pick, but not like this super high end target earner. So I just see it as being an offense, much like what we saw with the Bucs last year, that can all channel through 2 guys. And I think it will be Brian Thomas Jr. as the clear 1A. The question is, can Travis Hunter be a 1B to Ian's point, or is he going to serve as more of a 2? And I really do think a lot of it comes down to how much he's going to have to play defense versus just getting to play offense. And unfortunately, again, that's the hardest thing for us to predict. We can't say for sure what the coaching staff's going to do.
Dwayne, I will say, though, because, again, we both have Brian Thomas Jr. before updating with Travis Hunter. Maybe you won't, but we had him as wide receiver 5 overall. Couldn't you say Nico Collins, Malik Neighbors, Amon-Ra St. Brown, more confidence, I would say, in those guys getting to 130 plus targets than Brian Thomas Jr. And I feel better about CJ Stroud. I feel better about Jared Goff than I do Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence has never thrown Brian Thomas Jr. the ball 10 times in one game. That happened for 10 freaking straight weeks. We needed Mac Jones to actually get the top ceiling for Brian Thomas Jr. out there last year. I'm just saying, man, wide receiver 5, that's hefty. I don't plan on getting him out of the top 10, but if you want to move him down to wide receiver 9, I'm not calling you a crazy person.
Yeah, I'm not. I just think we've seen the ceiling is just too massive. I get the Trevor Lawrence thing, but I think a lot of that really came down to when Brian Thomas Jr. started going bananas. It's when they didn't have Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram. So I don't know. Is it more to do with Trevor Lawrence or the fact that the whole dynamic of their passing offense changed because they didn't have other guys to go to? But the point being is Brian Thomas showed that he could be the centerpiece of the entire offense. So I just think it's one of these offenses where it can go through the two. I do wish Trevor Lawrence offered more upside than what we've seen so far in his career, Ian. I would agree that that's probably outside how much Travis Hunter is going to have to play defense. That is the biggest risk here. But I'm going to continue to bet on Travis Hunter as long as he's drafted as a wide receiver 3. I agree with you guys. Once he starts getting drafted as, a low end wide receiver 2 to mid range wide receiver 2, then we probably have to evaluate like, okay, are we still going to be willing to do that? I'm not saying it's a for sure no. But I think it's something where we would have to stop and think about it. But right now where he's getting drafted, I think it's pretty much it's something that I'm going to do as often as I can because I have a feeling where he landed, he is going to continue to rise as far as his average draft position goes.
Just to finish it up, and we don't, Ian, have to talk about Trevor Lawrence for that long because I want people to stay and continue listening to us. But does this push him up for you at all? Could you see people saying, well, now Trevor Lawrence is a sleeper. He's got potentially two really good receivers with him. Consensus QB 20 at fantasylife.com. His points per game rank by year haven't been good either. He hasn't lived up to that generational talent. Our QB 24, QB 17, QB 12.
Can I tell you guys something? We're not live. We can cut this out probably. And I know we're live. I'm just kidding. I believe in Trevor Lawrence. I think this guy is still going to be a really good NFL quarterback. He's still only 25 years old. He's only been able to rent an RV in America for like 6 months at this point. Okay. We've seen him go out there, play great with who? Okay. He's great's a stretch, I'll admit, but who's he really been thrown to? All right. He had half a season of Brian Thomas Jr., more or less, because he had the injuries down there. Christian Kirk is fine. Evan Ingram, he kind of made a thing. That was impressive. You know what I'm saying? We love Liam Cohen. It's one of these situations where I feel like, we've seen it across the league as well. We were kind of making fun of it with the Bears. Like, oh my God, we have Ben Johnson. This is so great for these select players and not so great for these other guys just because we don't kind of like them. We have this bad taste left in our mouth. Liam Cohen coming there. If we love Brian Thomas Jr. and we love Travis Hunter, as Kendall is getting at, we should be feeling better about Trevor Lawrence. He does have that 300, 400-yard rushing upside that kind of differentiates him from some of those mid-tier, lower, and QB2 passers out there. Hey, we saw Baker Mayfield turned around with an assist from Liam Cohen. I think Trevor Lawrence is every bit as talented as Baker when it comes down to it. So if we had to, again, pick one of these later round quarterbacks who maybe could pull off that, 35 touchdown leap into the top 10 season, I'm going to be betting a pretty penny on Trevor Lawrence this year.
Ooh, I like that. All right, Ian. I didn't expect that. That's why I was saying, hey, don't worry, everyone. We'll get through this really quickly. But that was a good one. And they will have him on a pitch count this offseason. So if you guys see that news, he is still on track to be good to go in 2025, start in week 1. Let's continue on here, guys. Let's continue on here, guys. We're talking Ashton Jeanty, but first, have to hear from our friends over at Bud Light.
Hey, you're not actually allowed to drink in a beer commercial?
Since when?
You gotta wait till it's done. Oh,
5,
4, 3, 2, 1.
Continuing on, we're talking here about Ashton Jeanty going to the Las Vegas Raiders. Felt like maybe they weren't going to go through with it. They were going to trade out of that pick. They were going to go somewhere else. But Ashton Jeanty, the overall RB1, basically for everyone, Dwain, it felt like in a tier of his own this season as well, goes number 6 overall with Pete Carroll, who we've seen before. Pete Carroll, we know, has built around a backfield. So he got his guy. He couldn't help himself and just feels like a really good landing spot.
Yeah, the number 3 running back all time now in the rookie supermodel. Wow. If I add a decimal, 91.3 is his score. 91.1 was CMC. 100 was Saquon Barkley. So Barkley's number 1. So, but he's in this very top tier, just slightly above where Bijan Robinson finished as well. So, like, this is absolutely great. He good landing spot. He's a back that's capable of really handling everything. We obviously know the big rushing workload, like Ian's mentioned, nearly broke Barry Sanders' single season rushing record last year. This is a guy ultra productive on the ground, but also good in the passing game. The year before, he was really solid there. But if you look at his production score in the supermodel, it comes out as a 93. Remember, guys, everything in the supermodel is a rating between 50 and 100, and it combines the production as well as their draft capital and their film rating and their athleticism to give them the supermodels and that's where he's coming in number 4 overall. So he's got a film rating of 100, the best ever, obviously, in the supermodel. That's based on Lance Zierlein over at NFL.com, paired with his PFF rushing and receiving career grades. So, yeah, look, great player. Kendall lands with Pete Carroll. We know they're going to be willing to run the ball. We've got Chip Kelly. Maybe they can run more plays per game. And, man, there's just a depth chart here where really his main competition is Raheem Mostert. You know, you got Sincere McCormick sitting down there. I know Dylan Lobby, you know, our sleeper.
Our guy.
Zamir White.
Don't put that on me.
He's taking over this backfield immediately. I mean, if I look at the projections really quickly, and again, folks can check these out. They're up over at Fantasy Life right now. If you look at his projections, I gave him straight out, like right away, 67% of the carries, which is like the max, honestly, I give to any running back. So I've already given him the max treatment. I've got him involved playing most of the passing downs. And right now, if you look at where he comes out in the projection model, he comes out actually as the running back 4. So, I mean, he's way up there. You're going to draft him in the first round of your drafts, guys. Like there's no question about it. Like this guy's in store for a huge role.
Ian, he was already going in the first round of drafts. We didn't even know where the heck his landing spot was. It felt like anywhere he went, we were going to sit back and say, yeah, he's going to be RB1 workhorse kind of guy just because that's how good Ashton Jeanty is.
And that's the thing. Like when we were talking about Brian Thomas Jr., I was saying, man, maybe we could rank him as wide receiver 9. Dwayne's saying, no, I like wide receiver 5. I mean, that's how it is with Jeanty. Could he maybe be RB6 instead of RB3? Sure, fine. But at the end of the day, he's going to get 300 plus touches. There's actually this new up and coming analyst in fantasy, does really good work. Matthew Berry was pointing out that, 5 running backs have actually been selected in the top 10 recently, and they have averaged 295 touches per season starting out. So he's going to get force fed the football. I think his touch ceiling is as high as anyone. But look, that is similarly true for a handful of other guys, and I do think we like their offenses more, okay? Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, got to split up the carries a bit more with D-Mont, I get it, but that efficiency, we know it's there. Derrick Henry, and then probably Christian McCaffrey and Devon Achane. Even Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, Bucky Irving, like we're ranking Jeanty's offensive environment last, okay? Does that really matter when you get in that much volume? No, I think he's going to finish easily as an RB1, but man, Dwayne, like we could be looking up and seeing some, 25 carry, 80-yard games, no touchdowns, because he's playing for a Raiders team that still isn't very good. And I like Chip Kelly wanting to run hurry up and all that, but there is a reason why this dude wasn't able to get an NFL job for 9 years. I love what he did for my Ohio State Buckeyes, but come on, you had the most loaded offense in the entire freaking nation out here, all right? I'm not going to completely gush over him getting a bunch of points out of a bunch of 5-stars that no one else had in the country. So I do just wonder, again, Saquon, Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, are we probably calling it there?
After Bijan, I'm taking him over Jahmyr.
Even though we feel a 1,000,000% better about the Lions and the Raiders.
Yeah, I'm taking Ashton Jeanty over him. Look, I feel more. I'm not saying you have to. You just asked me where I would take him. So I mean, I'm more bullish on the Raiders offense overall than you. Like, I think all you need is an average quarterback, and they have one now in Geno Smith to give you the ceiling that you need as far as, for rushing and fantasy. You got a team that's going to be committed to it. You got a team that's hoping they can play defense. I think there could actually be a lot of things that could work out right that I'm not even projecting into this offense right now for the Raiders. So I think Jeanty's worth being the 3rd pick. I wouldn't blame anyone if they made it Jahmyr Gibbs. Obviously Jahmyr Gibbs, if David Montgomery is washed out of the equation, it's going to be the number 1 back in fantasy. So, I mean, you can't really argue it, but as much as I love Derrick Henry, getting older, I'm going to lean slightly to Jeanty. As much as I love CMC, a little older, had the injury history, I'm just going to lean to Jeanty. Achane, not quite as big as Jeanty, so love Achane as well, but I'm just going to lean to Jeanty over all those guys. And he's just that good of a prospect. I mean, we're talking about one of the 4 best, in the history of the model, and all of those guys have gone on to be top 6 running backs. So I just don't feel like there's much risk at all. I feel like there's actually more ceiling based on where I have him projected right now. I feel like he has ceiling from where I have him. So I like all the other guys you mentioned, but I would take Jeanty as high as 3.
Ian, can we add the wide receivers in there in the first round? Like if right now he's going at the end of the first round, right at 12. So if you add in CeeDee Lamb, Puka, Nico, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Amon-Ra St. Brown, what's the earliest you would take him? And Jahmyr Gibbs. I'll throw him in there.
I'm already lower. I was already lower on Gibbs than the rest of our rankers, like just because of the David Montgomery thing. Like, so I had him below those receivers that you talked about, the elite receivers, or a few of them. So I probably would just put Jeanty right in there. It's going to be he belongs in the tier though. Like there's going to be a tier of
ahead
like
of all those wide
guys.
receivers.
I think there's a tier of 5 guys there that you can take. I think he belongs
Jefferson,
above
CeeDee, and that's it.
You think it's what?
Chase, Jefferson, CeeDee, and then I'm taking the running backs.
In a PPR, yeah, and a half PPR, it changes things a little bit. But yeah, no, I mean I love those receivers too. They project at the very top as well.
Jeanty, man, I know he didn't have the numbers in 2024 receiving, but I honestly think that was almost a decision by Boise State to try to chase that Barry Sanders rushing record. Yeah. What he did in 2023, man, was actually pretty freaking crazy. Cool stat here. Last decade, only FBS running backs to average 3+ yards per route run in a single season, minimum 40 targets. Christian McCaffrey, Jahmyr Gibbs, and yes, Ashton Jeanty. So don't discount what this guy could do with the full future role. I like how Dwain and I have now swip-swapped in terms of who's higher on Jeanty. So, Dwain, I know he's a rookie and everything, but
I don't even know what's happening anymore.
I'm getting confused.
What's happening? Like I'm confused. Like I need a beer. I need a beer, Bud Light. Send me one right now.
Oh my gosh. All this to say though, guys, Ashton Jeanty's really damn good. You don't need us to tell you that. And he's already been going in the first round of drafts. So we know that we're going to be targeting him. We love the Las Vegas Raiders landing spot there. So yeah, just go and get Ian likes him more now, I guess. Ian likes him more. But you can go and check out Dwain's projections again, fantasylife.com. Use that code early25 to get 25% off any Fantasy Life Plus subscription. You want to do that before April 27th. That's when we shut that thing off. So promo code early25, EARLY 25, 25% off that subscription over there. So make sure you go and check it out. Let's go over to Tetairoa McMillan going over to the Carolina Panthers because they needed to get Bryce Young any kind of help that they could, guys, and they finally did it. Tetairoa McMillan, Dwain, number 8 overall pick, the wide receiver 1, if you don't want to count Travis Hunter in the wide receiver rookie supermodel. How do you like this landing spot? Even though it's Bryce Young, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, look, Tet McMillan, like obviously got the draft capital upgrade. He moved up. We thought he would be an 89 in the supermodel, but he actually went a little bit sooner than we thought. And because of like how much draft capital is worth up at the very top of the draft, Tet McMillan now ranks as I just resorted it, number 7 wide receiver all time in the supermodel. So you've got Marvin Harrison Jr., Jamar Chase, Malik Neighbors, Jalen Waddle, Travis Hunter, Devonta Smith, then Tet McMillan, 1 spot above Drake London, 2 spots above Garrett Wilson, 3 spots above Rome Odunze. So looking really good for him. Look, we've talked about him, Kendall. This is a guy like from a production standpoint stood out. He had a 93 production rate, an 88 production rating in the supermodel. He attacked all levels of the field. Some people are worried, like, can he really be a guy that takes the top off the defense? And I think when you just watch the film, I'm not a film expert, like I can get some of that. But at the same time, in college, it was not an issue for him. 19% of his targets came 20+ yards down the field. So 25% of his targets came 20+ yards down the 20+ yards down the field. The average NFL draft prospect since 2018 has seen 22% of their targets come 20+ yards down the field. So he was better than that. He attacked the intermediate. He attacked the short area. He didn't have to use a bunch of behind the line of scrimmage stuff. Ian's talked about actually a little bit better yards after the catch player than what people think, given especially his average depth of target being a 14. So man coverage, zone coverage didn't matter. This dude's best target share season, 34%. So I love him, Kendall. I think this is a guy that is going to come and immediately take over the passing game room for the Panthers. I think the big question here is, not target competition, is like what is Bryce Young? We saw some positive signs from Bryce Young at the end of last year, but can Bryce Young eventually turn into this 240, 250 yard per game guy? He can't stay this 200 to 210 yard per game guy, even if Tet's the only game in town, if we want a big ceiling that ultimately means that Tet could eventually be a wide receiver 1. I will say, if you look at his comps now in the model, like over 50% of them have gone on to be wide receiver 1s within their first 3 years. But I do think a lot of this comes back to Bryce Young.
Yeah, Ian, it looks, when you look at it too, following the week 11 bye, Bryce Young averaged 21 plus points per game over the final 7 games. But that's the big question is like, okay, we love Tet McMillan, but do we get the first half of Bryce Young from 2024? Or are we getting the second half, which for everything that it's worth too, wasn't like incredible. You know, it wasn't absolutely like breathtaking, but it was still good for Bryce Young.
He still made some pretty great throws along the way. I think it was only Joe Burrow had as many big-time throws as Bryce once he finally got that starting job back after a mysterious driver happened to crash into Andy Dalton. Lest we forget, that's what it took for the Panthers to give Bryce another chance out there. But no, it really was wild during that stretch. I mean, you look at it, I mean, the Chiefs game, the Eagles game. I mean, Bryce put them in so many positions to win late only for their defense to wind up blowing things. So I'm just happy the Panthers actually are trying to find out once and for all if Bryce is that guy, because here we were before today, and the only move the Panthers had made, the only addition on their offense the entire offseason was a backup running back in Rico Dowdle, who's fine, but let's face it, Adam Thielen, Xavier Legette, and Jalen Coker, you know, that's not moving freaking cities in terms of ranking wide receiver cores. So they tried to bring in Deontay Johnson last year. That obviously didn't work out, and as we saw with his next couple teams, maybe there's a reason why that we shouldn't blame the Panthers for, but just good on Carolina for getting another weapon in, you know, the offense for Bryce Young, because I was going to be pissed off if we were sitting here on Saturday, guys, saying, oh my goodness, are we really running back this core? So pour one out for all of our cokeheads. It sucks that Jalen Coker is probably going to be taking a seat on the bench now. But yeah, I'm excited about McMillan, and I'm excited about Bryce Young, hopefully keeping that momentum going. Dwayne, the problem is, again, we do have some of those prospects you named, Marvin Harrison Jr., Devonta Smith, sitting around that wide receiver 2 borderline. I am hard-pressed to think that Ted is just going to completely lap the field versus those guys in terms of targets. And as much as I do still, you know, maintain some optimism for Bryce Young moving forward, him versus Kyler Murray and then versus Jalen Hurts, like I don't think we're necessarily going to see a massive leap above those guys. So for me, something around that wide receiver 25 range, honestly, not too far removed from Travis Hunter, that sounds right to me. But again, if we're going to have to start chasing this dude into that, you know, top 20, God forbid, top 15 range, that's going to be a little bit tougher. So early thoughts on his rank, Dwayne.
Yeah, I don't think he'll steam that high because he landed in Carolina, but I do think you're taking him as a low-end wide receiver too. And I think you can kind of have your pick of guys, Ian, like in that range where you're like, I'm not taking him over these. And I think you could probably have a lot of guys you could make an argument for. Like if you're going to play fantasy football and draft 1 team or 2 teams with your buddies, you know, and you got to decide what kind of stand you're going to make on Tet McMillan. If you're like Ian and you're just a complete degenerate, and every time that you're on an incline walker, you know, you're going to be drafting a fantasy team, which he does every day because Ian's a very fit person, and he's going to draft like 300 teams. So I would say for you, Ian, you should be mixing him in with all those guys at the bottom of that round. I think we could see him outdo any of them. I think we could also see a case where Marvin Harrison Jr. outdoes him. I've got him projected right now for playing 91% of the routes. I can see that being a little higher, like elite route participation is 95%. I typically don't give that to a rookie, but I've got him at a 23% targets per route run, which is the average for a first round draft pick that went in his range of the draft over the last 10 years. So that comes out to 123 targets. So not bad. I mean, I think if he ran really pure, like I think his ceiling is 150. Like I think he could get there, but I think you got to be reasonable, right? Projecting him. And I've got him projected for 123. Like you probably nailed it. I haven't even looked at this yet, dude. I have Marvin Harrison Jr. projected for 124. So like, and you had no clue that I had that. So you are right in that, right. You are in the range, like to kind of give people a little bit of another example, Zay Flowers right around there at 116, but Drake London clearly above that at 145 in my projections. Yeah. So a tier below where we are with Drake London right now, but I could see a path where he surprises because there's just not much target competition at all. I mean, we got Adam Thielen, who obviously you can't write off, keeps doing it every year. Every year it's like, you know, oh, Adam Thielen's done. He just comes out, keeps getting these targets. But Legette was pretty much a bust last year. Jalen Coker showed some signs, but doesn't have a lot of draft capital. So the path's really clear, but right now I got him projected at 123 targets. But I think low-end wide receiver 2 offers high-end wide receiver 2 upside.
Right now, going off the board, wide receiver 27 over on Underdog, so that puts him in the range of Zay Flowers, Rome Odunze, Jameson Williams, Devontae Smith, to name the guys ahead of him. Just one question I see over here on Twitter, and I can give Dwayne or Ian, whoever wants it, the thoughts on the comparisons with Tetairoa McMillan to Mike Evans. If you see that, and if there's like a Dave Canales connection there at all. Lazy,
I don't know where
lazy
that came
take.
from. Mike Evans is just he's just a better player down the field. Man, just so strong after the catch. And obviously, if you compare anyone to Mike Evans, it's just tough because we're just talking about one of the best wide receivers we've seen in the last 15 years on the planet. So it's not necessarily even fair to Tet McMillan to get that. But no, I do not see Mike Evans as far as like the for sure big playability. Might Tet surprise us and have that? He definitely did show he could attack those layers of the field. Where I think where they are similar, Kendall, is they do have big bodies. They can win in contested catch situations. But Mike Evans can get over the top of NFL defenders, and he can either make the basket catch for 80 or he can win the contested jump ball. I think Tet would have to prove to us that he can be the guy that can just get over the top of some of the best DBs and beat them for 80 yards on an over-the-shoulder catch. I don't know that he has that yet. Where I think he could still be really good, though, is he could be more like a Brandon Marshall. He could be more like, even Larry Fitzgerald later in his career. Those guys weren't necessarily burning guys over the top, but man, just really, really good possession receivers that no matter what, their quarterback didn't care. As soon as they saw any kind of single coverage, and sometimes double coverage didn't matter, they're just going to throw him the ball. I do think Tet has a ton of potential, like in that area where if he's got a quarterback that trusts him, is just going to throw it no matter what. Like he is one of these guys that can come down with it.
Sorry, Twitter guy. Ian called you lazy, and Dwayne said hell no. So just, throw that comparison into the trash. Sorry about that.
Still love you, Twitter guy.
Still love you.
Sorry, I thought they were going to be a little nicer to you. No, I'm just kidding. Let's continue on here, guys. We're talking about the first tight end taken off the board. Name not Tyler Warren here. We're going to do a Dynasty deep dive presented by DraftKings. All right, we're not on a beach in Mexico like Dwayne was about a month ago, but we're still doing the Dynasty Deep Dive presented by DraftKings here. And guys, we're talking Colston Loveland, tight end, going over to the Bears at pick 10. I mean, Ian, were you surprised at this at all? We saw in some mocks that they were potentially going to take a tight end. We heard all the rumors that they were going to trade up and get Ashton Jeanty. Sorry to producer Swing, that didn't happen and his heart was broken. But Colston Loveland being the first tight end off the board instead of Tyler Warren, do you like this landing spot for him?
In the long term, I think it could be very nice. But again, in 2025 specifically, and we're going to have a similar conversation with Tyler Warren, it's just tough to be that excited about him because in Fantasyland, as much as, my God, I'd set the over-under at like 60,000 for how many times we're going to hear the Gronk and Hernandez, point made with Kmet and, Loveland going on in Chicago right now. But it's true. It's tough to find any circumstances other than that in New England, which was in 2011 at this point, where we saw two tight ends in the same offense simultaneously provide really good fantasy value. It didn't work in Philly with Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. We had freaking Kyle Rudolph and Irv Smith, who I kept drafting for some stupid reason. I've matured now, and because of that, I'm not going to make this same mistake again and completely freak out with Loveland. I don't know that he's going to be necessarily streamed up to be this top 8 or so tight end, but I wrote down some names where I just think it's going to be really tough to rank Loveland ahead of them. Brock Bowers, Trey McBride, George Kittle, Sam Laporta, Hawkinson, Andrews, as long as he's with the Ravens, Njoku, Kelsey, Jonnu Smith, Evan Ingram. That's 10 guys right there. Like, Dwayne, out of those 10, did I say any that you're just like knee-jerk, no, what are you talking about?
No. And I love Loveland. Like, he comes in as like one of the top 5 prospects all time in the supermodel at tight end. He's now at an 88 after securing that number 10 pick from the Bears. I'm with Ian. I think long-term, this is a great thing for him. Yep. It's not going to be that hard to get out of Kmet's contract next year. But I will say this, Cole Kmet is the caliber of a tight end that historically has been good enough to really kind of dampen a season number 1 for a rookie tight end. As much as we love Sam Laporta, we were projecting Sam Laporta to just come out and honestly, do really well right away. But the biggest part of it is there was no one else on the roster at all for the Lions. So it's just kind of like, they drafted a dude, they're going to play him. But remember, Dalton Kincaid did not enjoy that same success. Like, he still had to deal with Dawson Knox. And now we're going on 2 years of Dalton Kincaid not being able to get on the field full time. So I think landing spot and looking at the depth chart in front of you, obviously Brock Bowers is a case where we could, Michael Mayer was also was a strong prospect as well. Bowers is very special. He just came out and erased everything and took over. So Could Loveland do that? He is good enough from a talent perspective that like maybe it could happen, but I think betting on it happening is a little bit tough. So right now, I mean, I put him in the projections, Ian, coming in as the tight end 14 overall in PPR, coming in as the tight end 13 and half PPR. So once you get to that range where you're like, you know, okay, I'm looking for a low end tight end 1, and maybe you get lucky and he does just take over the whole thing. Like I think in that range, it's fine to take him, but you're also getting past the names you just talked about, and you're getting into these other names where it's kind of like, okay, we've seen this experiment for 5 years. We know this tight end is not going to be anything. And once you get to that spot, I think that's where you just go ahead and say, I'm going to take the guy in Colston Loveland. Right now, I don't even have him at a 70% route participation because I do think Cole Kmet is good enough to keep him from that. I've got him at 65%. Give him a 21% targets per route run, though. The average tight end taken in his range has been 22% in their first year, but you got to deal with DJ Moore. What if Rome Odunze takes a step forward, and you still have Cole Kmet, right, who could be out there earning targets? Also, we could see them do something at running back. You know, we'll have to wait and see what happens there. So I think there are enough questions. I love Colston Loveland and Dynasty. The supermodel like Colston Loveland over Tyler Warren, even ahead of the draft. Whenever we had Tyler Warren in all mock drafts, or at least for the most part, going ahead in mock drafts over Loveland. So I do think the Bears got the pick right as far as for the long term of their franchise. It's just tough to put him in like that top. Like Ian said, it's tough to get him past like, you know, tight end 12 for me right now, looking at the rest of the guys that are available.
It's a great real life ad for the Bears. I want to make that clear. And I know this is our dynasty angle.
Yeah.
So if you want to rank him, honestly, as high as like tight end 4, tight end 5, I think that's in play for the guy. So long term, very, very good. I'm not trying to crap on that. But when you look at some of the top performing, you know, rookie tight ends in recent years, Brock Bowers, he actually wasn't even playing, Dwayne, that many routes, at least as many as we wanted him to during those first 3 weeks before Michael Mayer missed, you know, half the season basically with his personal stuff going on. And then we also only had Jacoby Myers to worry about anyway. Then we had Sam, because Devontae Adams was out of the picture. Then we had Sam Laporta, who really only had to deal with Amon-Ra St. Brown. And we saw how that kind of came crashing down in year 2 once Jameson Williams was stepping up. So I thought Dwayne hit the nail on the head with DJ Moore and Rome Odunze likely being the leading target getters. And then after that, the pie is just already that much smaller to divide. And that's before we do need to make that leap that, yes, Caleb Williams is going to make the jump under Ben Johnson, which I do think he has a good chance of doing. But again, I think the big moral of the story here is don't completely discount Cole Kmet, all right? Ryan Poles, the same guy that had to give his okay to pick Colston Loveland in the first place, he's the same general manager that ended up giving Cole Kmet that 4-year, $50 million extension in the first place. Okay. So I know sometimes it's tough to exactly discern, you know, who's making these decisions, but you know, like for Ben Johnson, I keep hearing like, oh, he hates DeAndre Swift. You saw what happened to DeAndre Swift in Detroit as soon as Ben Johnson took over at OC. Like, was he even the third or fourth guy in that room that got to make that decision? All right. So Ryan Poles did like Cole Kmet enough to make that move. He liked Loveland too, which is good in the long term. But for this year, I think tight end 13 hits the nail on the head.
Dynasty angle, though, Ian. Colston Loveland, and Kendall, you answer as well. This is a rapid fire between you two because I already know my answers. I'll chime in. Colston Loveland, I'm talking Dynasty now, right? So obviously Brock Bowers is above him. Trey McBride's above him. I'm not giving you guys those names. Colston Loveland versus Sam Laporta.
Oh,
Sam Laporta
so
in
close.
Dynasty. Right away, I gave you a zinger.
Give me Colston Loveland. I think Sam Laporta was arguably, I don't want to hate on Sam Laporta too much. How should I say this?
I was going to say it.
Sam Laporta benefited from an amazing system that we're going to get to see Colston Loveland in. It's Ben Johnson once again, and I think Colston Loveland is the more talented pass catcher, even if Laporta is maybe a bit more complete. I would go Colston Loveland tight end 3, Sam Laporta tight end 4 right now.
All right, Kendall.
I already said Sam Laporta right away. I
You
said
did
Sam
right
Laporta
away.
right
Okay.
away.
So
I'm going
Loveland's
with my
an 88
gut.
in the supermodel. Laporta's a 76. Let's go with the next one here. I think this one's so easy. Versus Dalton Kincaid.
Come on, Dwayne.
Well,
This isn't
You're
a
going
comedy
with
hour.
Loveland. All right. What about Mark Andrews? Getting
How-
older.
Yeah, come on.
Loveland.
Yeah, Loveland. TJ Hawkinson. Loveland.
No. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
You
I gave
can
you
name
the hard
every
one.
tight
The
end in
hard
the
one
league
was-
if
the
you
hard one
want.
was Sam. Yeah, the hard one was Sam
The only
Laporta.
difficult one.
The hard one was
Kyle
Sam
Pitts.
Laporta, so.
Oh,
I didn't even get
Too
it
soon.
either.
That's my bad.
Don't
That's
do
my bad.
this.
I do
Don't
think
do this.
Laporta is where it gets tough. And
Laporta is
for the
close.
record, Laporta, after he got healthy last year, was essentially the same as he was as a rookie. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Overall, won't be a weekly starter, like you said, Ian. So for anyone looking at Dynasty, right, in redraft leagues right out of the gate, but premium stash in Dynasty right now. I saw our last mock draft, had him, and of course this is gonna be changing because all these players are going this weekend, but we had him at pick 14 overall rookie Superflex Dynasty draft. Is that kind of where you think
Loveland?
you could see him going?
Higher, yeah.
Yep.
Way
14.
Higher. Wait, it was
10?
a super flex, but not tight end premium, right?
Not tight end premium.
Yeah, that's
Tight
still
end
too
premium,
low
top
for a
4,
tight
top
end
5.
going pick 10 with this high of a rating.
Okay.
Like I'll tell. Look, I get it. The wide receivers have a bigger ceiling. But let me ask you this, Ian: would you rather have Colston Loveland or Matthew Golden? I know we haven't talked about him yet.
I think I'd take Loveland over Golden and probably
I
even
think Loveland's a
Egbuka,
better
man.
player.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I get it. Look, if the wide receivers carry, we get it. If you hit on them, they have the bigger ceiling typically. They're the guys who go for 1,400 yards and 10 touchdowns. You rarely get that, from a tight end. So I understand that from a theory perspective, but I think 14 or whatever it was, that's too low. I think Colston Loveland should be a first round pick.
All right.
You don't see
there we
tight
go.
ends drafted this high. Tied for the 5th highest drafted tight end since 2000 with Eric Ebron. Shout out.
Wow.
By a team that
All right, there you go.
really wanted him. So
Yeah.
All right. That was the Dynasty Deep Dive presented by DraftKings. So make sure you go over to fantasylife.com. Check out all the great content we've got going on. Shout out to Sam Wallace. He's been doing such an incredible job over there. So check out those articles 100% free. Let's continue on, guys. Let's hear from our friends at DraftKings first. All right, the draft is almost here, and if you love the game as much as I do, I've got a killer deal for you. Head over to DraftKings Sportsbook's new customers who bet $5 will instantly score $200 in bonus bets. That means with just a small bet, you're loaded with extra power to back your predictions and cheer on your picks. Whether you're watching the draft or gearing up for the season, this is your chance to join in on the action. Download the DraftKings app now and sign up using code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. Continuing right along, let's go over to the other tight end that was not taken first, who was a lot of people's tight end one, not the rookie supermodel, though. That's why you have to go and check that out at fantasylife.com from Dwain McFarland knew better. You had to listen to Dwain McFarland. He was trying to tell us. He was telling us. He was yelling from the mountaintops. It's Colston Loveland first. But Dwayne, Tyler Warren goes over to the Colts, and why it's a good NFL decision, right? They needed a tight end in there. They have not had good tight end production. They need someone that can help them try to win now. But for fantasy football, we still have to talk about Tyler Warren with, unfortunately, Anthony Richardson and his low, bad completion percentage. I just have to throw it out there.
Yeah. I can't take complete credit because the other day Ian tried to put me on the spot and I'm like, no, the model said that. And he said, you made the model. I was like, no. So, I can't. The model said that Colston Loveland should go ahead of Tyler Warren. So, I can't necessarily take all the credit. The supermodel did his job on it. But yeah, Ty Warren, like you nailed it, Kendall. Like, again, we're still talking about a really good prospect here. He didn't break out until year 5. The model is dinging him for that. I will say in the version of the supermodel that doesn't have draft capital, just so we can kind of see, like, okay, if we just looked at the production, we just looked at the film, where would we rate this player? All time in the supermodel, he would rank 23 spots below where he does right now, which is the 6th best tight end of all time. Now, ultimately, that's the number you care about because draft capital matters, because NFL teams want to be right. They're going to give this guy a ton of chances to be successful. But the big thing in the model that held him down, Kendall, is if you look at his production rating, it's a 72 for a tight end taken this high. We've never had one with a production rating that low. That's in line with a name you're not going to like, which is this guy was a lot older than this. Hayden Hurst is the last first-round tight end to have a production rating as low as what we have with Tyler Warren. People are probably thinking, what are you talking about, dude? You see what Tyler Warren did last year? Yes, but the way the model works is you get more weighting for what you do early in your career. You do get credit for what you do in that 5th year. It's just not worth as much. So Tyler Warren does get a little bit dinged for that, but at the end of the day, still the 6th best prospect in the supermodel. I do think it's going to end up being a good pick for the Colts. I also think that he will probably get a lot of playing time right away. I know the Colts have rotated guys a lot, Kendall, but at the same time, it's one of those deals where if you look at them, you're like, who have the Colts really had? Like they've had Mo Alley
Yeah.
Cox, Will Mallory, Drew Ogletree. I mean, it's not like they've Kylan Granson. There was no one forcing
Jelani
their
Woods.
hand to let them. Yeah. Jelani Woods. There was no one forcing their hand to really get them on the field. The draft capital alone is going to force their hand to try to put Tyler Warren on the field more. So I think he does have a better shot in year one to probably get to an 80% route participation than Colston Loveland. Because I think Cole Kmet's far better than anything that the Colts have as a tight end that would potentially be standing in his way. Now, Kendall, you already mentioned it. The challenge is, can we get a quarterback to throw complete over 50% of their passes? We know that Daniel Jones could do that. Daniel Jones, honestly, would be great for Tyler Warren. You know why? Daniel Jones loves to check the ball down to his slot wide receivers. Where's Tyler Warren at his best? Underneath the coverage. Let the guy do the stuff after the catch. You design the stuff. You get him set up like Thor's talked about so many times. Let him just run after the catch. But we know realistically, like the Colts have got to try to let the Anthony Richardson thing work out. So that's problematic. Right now, I have the Colts projected for the fewest passing yards per game, the fewest touchdowns overall per game. So not a passing offense we really love. Having said all of that, like for Dynasty, Tyler Warren, still going to be a really good pick. This year, I think you're looking more like tight end 14. Honestly, you could put him kind of in that same bucket, Ian. I think get your thoughts here is Colston Loveland. He's one of these guys. Once you get past the group you named earlier and you get to these guys where you're like, man, I've picked these guys for 5 years. I know they're not good. I just want to do something different. I feel like Tyler Warren's in the conversation. And I do think that he could end up getting the playing time, but Kendall did nail it. The big question is, man, is there any path to us getting upside out of this passing game overall with the quarterbacks we have?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you want to rank Warren between tight end 11, tight end 15 this year, I'm probably not going to argue too deep either way. I think he's probably deserving of tight end 5 in Dynasty land. I would put Laporta ahead of him, and yes, Colston Loveland, but those other guys you were naming, the Kincaids of the world, yeah, give me Tyler Warren right now. But it's going to be tough in 2025. Dwayne, you got to be careful saying that Daniel Jones under center would be great for anyone. All right, just like full stop. It's when my wife says like it's cold outside when it's 45 degrees. And I'm like, no, we can't use that verbiage right now.
It would be better than Anthony Richardson.
What?
I'm sorry, I shouldn't say great.
Yeah, but that's still not great.
But he
did
beat Sterling Shepard and all these other guys underneath. So the same kind of thing that Tyler Warren does. But yeah, that's fair. Okay, Daniel Jones would be above average. Versus bad from Anthony Richardson.
Thank you. Just had to get that off my chest. But even then, man, Evan Ingram wasn't exactly, blowing the doors out of the fantasy, water when we saw him out there. I don't know what that phrase was, but we'll work on it. But look, I'm also thinking Tyler Warren is better than Evan Ingram. So I understand that's part of the equation. But then again, I don't really love this fit. And this is the reason we've been complaining about it from a fantasy angle for most of this offseason, because it was a very popular, mock draft landing spot. Because yes, I agree in the underneath areas, this should work, but that's kind of like where Josh Downs wants to be. That's kind of where Michael Pittman wants to be. All right. We have Alec Pierce on the outside. Maybe A.D. Mitchell can get his, shit together over here as well. But I just am not overly confident that Warren's going to be able to seize his target share because no one in Indianapolis has been able to do that. So great pick by the Colts. They got Thor Nystrom's number 4 overall player at pick 14. I think they just took the best overall player and it also represented a need. But man, just in terms of that potential target share, that's the problem. Like Dwayne, I'm with you. He's going to hit that 80% route rate. And that is, a large part of the battle. But where did he come out with that target share? Because if I had to guess, probably no Colts receivers are getting close to 20 right now.
Yeah, I've got him at 18%, but the challenge is you've got a bunch of guys just spread out around there, right? Mm-hmm. So I've got Josh Downs at 21, Michael Pittman at 21, and then you've got Tyler Warren at 18. And like any one of them could be could be the leader of the group. It's hard to say which one, but again, the biggest challenge is like even if one of them broke 3 to be like a 23, 24% guy, like Josh Downs is underrated, man. Last year, Josh Downs a 28% targets per route run. Like the dude is actually a beast, and he was playing through injuries and everything else. I do think he works a little bit more vertically than Tyler Warren, but to your point, Michael Pittman does kind of work in the same area of the field as Tyler Warren. If you're trying to get the ball to the backs out of the backfield, also kind of in the same area of the field as Tyler Warren. So I'm with you. I think there are a lot of potential challenges here. This is more of a long-term bet, but I think anywhere between like tight end 12 and 16, if you want to take him in fantasy just because you're tired of the other guys and you're just hoping you get the upside, you're just betting on the talent. When the NFL season starts, weird stuff happens. knock on wood, we don't want anybody to get hurt, but as Ian says, Josh Downs wins the lottery. Michael Pittman wins the lottery. They're both out for a 5-game stretch. I could see us liking Tyler Warren then, but it would take that sort of thing, I think, before we would ever be ranking him like in our top 6 on a weekly basis.
I think overall better maybe for the NFL side than fantasy football. Hopefully Anthony Richardson, like you guys said, gets better because he's big for this year, 6'6", 260. He's been described as a do it all, do everything tight end. So you look at him, he's got good traits as a blocker. He's someone that maybe they feel like he can help them win now. They haven't had a good tight end in a really long time, and they've had 467 receiving yards from all of their tight ends combined last season. So it does help them there. But for fantasy football, I'm with you guys. Not the most fun, sexy pick for Tyler Warren.
Well, Kendall, just like real quick, guys, the last other small part with Tyler Warren, he was so good as a rusher at Penn State. They use him the Wildcat all the time. I think I listed him on these podcasts. His numbers were legit, like top 5. I don't see them giving him carries. At least he's not going to have as good of a chance as he would in other offenses that don't have one of the most gifted running quarterbacks in Anthony Richardson and Jonathan freaking Taylor. So, yeah, maybe we get 1 or 2 cool motions per game or something. But you think they're taking Richardson and JT away from the football inside the 5-yard line? And probably unlikely 1%. In a lot of other places. But, yeah, 1%, right? And we probably weren't going to be higher than 5% elsewhere, so I get it. But definitely not going to hit that ceiling in Indianapolis.
Because it feels like they're not going to bubble wrap. They're not going to bubble wrap Anthony Richardson, right? Like they're not going to say, "Hey, we don't want you to get hurt anymore. We're not going to let you do, your calling card, your good traits." Sorry, Dwayne, I just had to say that.
I think I would rather him not get hurt, but I think I don't know that Anthony Richardson can take that out of himself. So here's the question I would ask you guys: if they could trade their 3rd round pick, 80 overall, and their 2nd round pick, 45 overall, to get the top of round 2, and they took Shedeur Sanders.
Wow.
I'm not
thoughts on that.
I don't think
I'm not a big Shedeur fan overall. So, but still, like Shedeur is an accurate passer. Like, I mean, I think we would all probably be more bullish on Shedeur Sanders as the quarterback than we would Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones this year. Would we not?
Yes, because he doesn't run as much.
That bad for Shedeur now?
No. It's a yes. It's a yes. I can see it. Like it's the same situation. I thought the Giants were going to come in and take him today when they traded back up and just say, "Hey, just sit behind Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston for a year."
Jaxson Dart,
and then they went Jaxson Dart. So that's another thing that we're going to talk about here. So I would say yes. I just can't see him doing it. It feels like they're going to live or die this season by Anthony Richardson, and then they're going to clean house. That's probably the hottest seat in the NFL right now, right, Ian?
It's just that he's fallen. He's fallen this far, so I think it puts it on the table. Here's all I would say. It would at least give us hope. Right now, I don't know if we have any hope. That's the problem. There's no hope.
I believe in Anthony Richardson.
Anthony Richardson's only going into year 3.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kendall. Sorry, what were you saying?
No, I'm just saying I believe. So like maybe I don't. It's bad though. It's not good. It's great for us in fantasy, but just overall.
They got to add a developmental quarterback. Like Dwayne, when me and Thor were doing our, favorite fantasy pick for every team, for the Colts, I had them getting Kyle McCord at the end of round 3. Obviously, I do have Shedeur Sanders ranked higher than Kyle McCord, and I do think that, yes, he would be a slight upgrade over Daniel Jones and especially Anthony Richardson as a passer. But even then, man, like if we're just looking at the Colts team passing yards projections per game, 5, 10 extra yards, 15 if you want to have a couple Bud Lights before, I don't think we're going
that's all you would that's all you would project, but the point would be like at least with Shedeur we would feel like there's a chance that he really shouldn't have fallen as far as he did. I mean, people thought he was an early round 1 pick at one time and that you could get lightning in the bottle. I feel like the chances of getting lightning in bottle with the 2 quarterbacks they have right now, like I'm not there. I just don't see how Anthony Richardson suddenly turns into a 63% passer, right? Given what we've seen so far. And Daniel Jones will just never turn into a guy that's willing to take the risk that puts your team in a situation to win the big games and score a lot of fantasy points. He just wants to not have turnovers. So at least Shedeur Sanders would give you the chip on your shoulder. You guys shouldn't have all passed on me. He was actually a good college quarterback, right? So anyway, we can move on. I was just trying to find some way to have hope because there's actually players. I like Josh Downs and I like Tyler Warren. So I would like them to have a quarterback, but it's probably just not in the cards for 2025.
He's like, I like them, but not that much because it's Anthony Richardson. So I think that's where we all are, unfortunately. But we'll see. Maybe magically overnight, Dwain, he did become a better passer, and then we're just going to have this explosive season. Probably not, but that's okay. I'm going to be the optimistic one here. We're going to keep going. Probably I don't know, is it safe to say the worst fantasy football landing spot tonight, Ian, with Emeka Egbuka going to Tampa Bay? I saw the tweet and I was just immediately sad. I think I tweeted that this is fantasy football nightmare fuel. So, your Ohio State Buckeye, Emeka Egbuka, number 19 overall, joins, I have to give Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Jalen McMillan. And that's a loaded wide receiver room, Ian.
Yeah, I mean, vibes are pretty high to start this podcast. Tet McMillan, Carolina, we can get behind that. Ashton Jeanty, talking about him being a top 3 running back. And man, these tight ends and these wide receivers, at least Egbuka, not quite as pretty. So I know what some people are going to say, oh, why is Jalen McMillan a thing? Just a third rounder. You score 8 touchdowns as a rookie. I don't think you're just going to be sat on the bench, with all due respect to Ohio State's all-time leader in reception. So it just feels like overlap to me. I mean, if they hadn't re-signed Chris Godwin, if they let him take all that money that New England was trying to throw at him, this pick would have made all the sense in the world. But for a team that is returning all 11 starters on offense, I'm just puzzled why they felt the need to go with Emeka. But hey, someone who, as we heard time and time again, had the best interviews of any player out there, seems to have one of the higher floors of the position. It was cool to see him wind up being the second wide receiver off the board, if you don't count Travis Hunter in that equation. So good stuff from Emeka, and I think he makes all 32 teams better. But man, Dwain, I feel for you with those projections trying to do them with Tampa Bay, because look, Mike Evans isn't leaving the field, Chris Godwin isn't leaving the field, and if we have a wide receiver like Emeka fighting for 55-60% routes or so next to Jalen McMillan, that's a problem. And that's before even thinking about guys like Cade Otton, like Bucky Irving, who also have proven capable of earning some targets. We also do have Liam Cohen out of the picture at this point, yet another offensive coordinator for Baker Mayfield. So, hey, speaking of Baker, great news for this guy. I mean, we're talking about probably the consensus QB6 by the time we get our ranks updated now. But man, with Emeka Egbuka, I mean, he's going to be tough to squeeze in that top 50, and it's unfortunate that's the way it is.
Yeah, with Egbuka, you're just going to have to bet on the talent, and you just know that the way the season plays out, weird things can happen. He could get into playing time. You don't know for sure, but I was really struggling to get him to 70% route participation. The Bucs are a team, they don't play their 2 top guys all the time. You don't see, so Mike Evans doesn't get a 95% route participation. Neither is Chris Godwin. They're in the mid 80s. So it leaves this little bit of extra where they can play these other 2 wide receivers. They are going to mostly run 11 personnel, so that helps. But still, a 70% route participation whenever you've got these other 2, strong target earners, and Egbuka as a rookie, I gave him a 19% targets per route run. That's the best I could give him, because I just didn't see a way. And I took a half percentage point away from, Mike Evans, a half percentage point away from Chris Godwin. So it took a little bit away, but at the same time, if you just look at where it projects, you're not going to be able to draft him in fantasy this year just based on his projection. His projection is coming out as wide receiver 56. You're going to have to be making a talent bet, which would be the Bucs offense somehow goes nuclear. And they're feeding all 3 of these guys. Every once in a while, you get a random year like that. But even that is tough to say, because Baker really honestly is the biggest quarterback due for negative regression. I mean, he had career highs in touchdowns per attempt last year. Even though you had Egbuka, he's probably not hitting 7% again. He's probably going to be at 5%, which is still really good. He also hit career highs in his rushing yards per game. That's probably going to come back down. Not saying it's coming all the way back down. And you look at his yards per attempt, he had a career high. So Baker's due for a regression, even with adding Egbuka. I think it's going to be a challenge, for him to ultimately pay off in this consistent way. I think in Dynasty, it's really nice, Kendall. I mean, if you look at what he did in the Supermodel, this was really good for him. He's a guy that many thought was going to fall into round 2 of the draft due to concerns about not being able to threaten the vertical area of the field. Only 12% of his targets came 20+ yards down the field during college, but teams really did seem to still like him. So he's got a Supermodel rating of 84, which is still pretty strong. What that says is you've got a wide receiver 3 with mid-range wide receiver 2 upside in the first 3 years of his career. So in Dynasty, I like Egbuka. I think this still ultimately works out for him. 1 year, it's going to be tough for him. He's going to need some luck to really be helpful to your fantasy teams just for 2025.
Well, and Ian, it sucks too because you go from a loaded program and then you have to now go to just this loaded offense where you say, "Hey, I can't." You know, he was just in a loaded program already where he did perform there and he was deployed like JSN, and you could say, "Okay, that's fantastic." Now you go to another side where you say you have to wait, or people might look at him and say, unfortunately, you all know on this show we never want injuries, but they look at it and they say, "All right, well, Chris Godwin is getting older. He suffered an injury last season. Mike Evans did the same thing. He was able to come back." They say that Chris Godwin is good. His timeline should line up with week 1, but that, I guess, is the other side of it where you never want to you never want to think injuries are going to happen, but that might be the Emeka Egbuka route as well, where he could get a little bit more if either of those two went down.
Yeah, should be ready for week 1, lest we forget Todd Bowles left the window open for Godwin to return if they made a quote-unquote deep playoff run last year. These freaking coaches, man. But look, again, Egbuka's used to this. He had Marvin Harrison Jr., JSN, as you said, Kendall, even Jeremiah Smith, who we're going to be talking about a lot in future years on this show to deal with in Columbus. But, man, I like the talent, but there's a lot of talented wide receivers in the NFL. And, I mean, when you start just going through who we have ranked in this kind of wide receiver 4 range right now, I mean, Jaden Reed, Ricky Parasol, former first-round pick himself, Khalil Shakur, Josh Downs, Michael Pittman, just tossed them up. Cooper Kupp and Stephon Diggs, who, yes, are getting a little bit longer in the tooth, I get that, but have way higher target projections than what Egbuka's looking at. I mean, that's rounding out our top 50 right there. And then we still even have guys like Christian Kirk and Darnell Mooney, who are going to be number 2 targets in passing games that we don't think are going to completely suck. So, I mean, we had Jalen McMillan as the wide receiver 54 before any of this happened. And again, Emeka better than him. I think we can agree he should be projected higher than McMillan, but when you're cutting that, number 3 wide receiver role, not necessarily in half, but you're at least reducing the pie a little bit, it makes it tough. So Dynasty, I'm with Dwain, but even there, Kendall, I mean, Chris Godwin, they just signed him. He's going to be here for at least the next 2 seasons. I know Mike Evans is a free agent starting next year, but it's not a guarantee he's gone. And I'm not so sure Emeka is going to be the replacement for Evans in the first place with their difference in play style. So tough run out, at least for 2025.
Tough. Sorry, Jalen McMillan dynasty managers as well. That was a shot to the heart. So I'm sorry if you thought that was not going to happen. It did. Yeah. Have some
McMillan could be the guy in the future to play outside a little bit more and try to be more the vertical guy. Like, so don't completely give up on him. If Mike Evans were to leave next year, like I'm with Ian, like he would be the guy potentially to be more the X. Egbuka could still be the leading target earner. Like he's still the guy you want more, but I don't think McMillan's completely drawing dead if they don't re-sign Evans.
All right, pour half a beer out. Not the whole thing, just pour a little bit out for Jalen McMillan dynasty.
Leave some for yourself.
Just a little bit. Just leave some for yourself.
Drink
and
half
keep it
the beer and then, look at the glass and say it's half full.
We'll figure it out next season. It's fine. Let's keep going, guys. Omarion Hampton did not go to the Denver Broncos. We're looking at you, and we're kind of going to wait to see what happens tomorrow with the Denver Broncos. But Omarion Hampton does go 22 overall to the Los Angeles Chargers. Sorry, Ian. It was fun while it lasted with the Najee Harris hype. That feels not dead, right? But like it's just not great right now. What did you think, Ian, of this Omarion Hampton pick for the Chargers?
What a just 6-week era for Najee Harris as, the Chargers workhorse RB1. So, yeah, I mean, this really hurts Najee. And my first thought, I was trying to kind of find a comparable backfield. I think what I'm leaning towards is a middle-class man's Detroit Lions is what we're looking at here. Because, again, I brought the stats out before. What Najee did in Pittsburgh was very similar to what Montgomery did in Chicago. And they're now both getting to hopefully thrive in newer, improved places. We've seen what Monty's done in Detroit. We'll see if, again, the Chargers kind of do that for Najee. I said middle-class mans. I'm not trying to equate the guys. And then with Hampton, someone who I know Dwain, the supermodel, had him a little bit closer to a round 2 guy than, God forbid, going 12 to Cowboys. So it was good to see that kind of play out, 10 points for the supermodel and everything. But even for him, man, it's a situation where it could be similar to Jahmyr Gibbs, where we're just left saying, man, those 15 touches were cool. Would have been a lot cooler if they were 22 or 23 out there. So, Dwain, I know before the show we were talking about how exactly to divide up the touches. And hey, Hampton got round 1 draft capital. I think it would be, silly of us not to assume he can't take this thing over by the end of the year. Najee's only on this 1-year, $5.25 million deal anyway. But man, I just feel like Najee and the things he can do for this offense, being that big bodied runner, grinding out yards after contact, at least, through the middle of the offensive line. I just think they do complement each other enough that it's going to be 60-40 Hampton down the stretch, hopefully. But in the beginning, man, if it's 50-50, I would not be shocked.
Yeah, I mean, right now I've got Hampton projected for 50% of the carries, Najee for 40%, not really giving anything to the backups. So I do think it's tighter, but I think where you potentially get the value is what you mentioned. Like by week 8 or 9, does Hampton really start to take over the backfield? I think he's got more big playability. So if he's breaking those long plays, if he's holding up in pass protection, I think those are really the key things that could unlock more for him. The good news is we do like the Chargers offensive line theoretically. I know it kind of underperformed last year. A lot of first round picks in front of them. We like the fact that we've got a coach and a staff there that's willing to really stick with the ground game. We've got a quarterback we know can move the ball. So I think overall, long-term, really good landing spot for Omarion Hampton. But like you said, out of the gate early in the year, I do think it's going to be more of a split than what people are probably going to want. So it's going to ultimately come down to what's the ADP on this player going to be, right? Right now in Underdog, I want to say it got up to round 5, round 4. I think he probably holds steady. I don't think he's going to shoot up from there. So I think it's going to be a matter of, do you want to make a bet on a player that you think could win you your fantasy championship when it's time, and you kind of got to deal with some bumps along the way early in the season where you might get some bad outings here and there, but you could still get, 100 yards and a rushing touchdown just because the guy is a big playmaker. I think that's ultimately the decision you're going to have to make. So I think I'm still going to be betting on Hampton. I want to see where ultimately his average, where his ADP ends up sitting. He is the number 11 running back all time in the supermodel with a rating of 79. Like you said, he's slightly overrated for being a first-round pick. He really looks more like a second-round pick based on the history of the model. But the hit rate for a player like this, if you're a dynasty player, you should be pretty excited. 80% of his comps went on to post a top 12 running back finish within their first 3 years. Nice. So this is still a really good dynasty prospect. The question is, how quickly do we get there this year? And there is a worst case scenario, Ian, where it's all year long that he has to chop it up with Najee and he never gets to take it over. So there's a wide range of outcomes here. There really is. And again, rookies can come out and perform poorly. Like what if he's bad in pass pro, or he lets Justin Herbert get sacked and Justin Herbert breaks a rib and then they get pissed off and they're like, you're not, like, he could land in a lesser role than what I'm projecting here. But because of the draft capital, we believe in the talent profile as being pretty good. I'm giving him 50% of the rushing attempts. I gave Najee slightly more of the passing down work. I gave him 40% route participation and 35% to Hampton. Hampton, not like this great receiving back or anything, but he's good enough, and he's shown that he's capable as a blocker, like still has some growing to do. So I still kept him pretty close there as well, but a slight hedge to Najee, at least for early in the season.
Kendall, where would you fall with Hampton versus guys like Alvin Kamara and James Conner, where we know every single week that those guys are healthy together early in the season, we're going to be ranking Kamara and Conner ahead of him. But let's face it, rookie, younger legs. We probably like, the Chargers offense has a higher ceiling. You could maybe have that, quote unquote league winner upside, but that's where it's going to be tough for me. Cause again, right now we kind of have Kamara and Conner, RB19, RB20. I see myself having Hampton right by them. I'm not sure if I'm ready to, draft this rookie in a timeshare over Alvin freaking Kamara though,
Me. Well, James Conner is always the guy that I always think is severely underrated every time we go into the season. So I am always kind of on the side of going with James Conner. Same with Alvin Kamara, where you always think age, but just how many passes he catches, you're just like, well, you can't really fade him that much either. Yeah. So I think this is a fine landing spot, like Dwayne said. But when I look at it too, like last season, they wanted it to come together when you looked at that backfield with Edwards and Dobbins, and then it just never really happened. They finished 24th in rushing success rate. And so they wanted it to happen, and it just wasn't there with not good running backs. 392 rushing attempts. Chargers rushed a little over 1,500 yards, gained only 3.97 yards per carry. So I want to believe, like you, Ian, that Najee Harris was going to be the guy, and it lasted for about 4 weeks. But I'm not necessarily calling him dead, like right away. But it does make me a little bit worried where we see these running backs and just these rookies overall get a little bit better as the season progresses. So we could see like this change where you say, okay, wait, now Omarion Hampton's looking a little bit better, and they start to turn to him more. But they tried last year, and it just didn't work as well as you thought. And we said this team is always going to be a little bit running heavy. It just wasn't that excellent in fantasy.
It's a roster construction question when you're drafting. Like, if you want upside for late in your season, you're taking Omarion Hampton. You could easily pair him with someone like Alvin Kamara that's forgotten in drafts, and you're using Kamara early in the year. And then, like, if he tires out because he's getting old, maybe it's at the same time Hampton's taking over. So I think you got to think about the way you put your roster together. I think what we could probably all agree on is Hampton could be a guy. We could all easily see it that's helping you win your fantasy championship. The question is, like, can you really use him early in the year, and how dependable will he be? That's the thing that you've got to figure out. So when I draft players like this, I try to think about, okay, like, who can I take that could give me some value early in the year that no one wants just because they think they're old? Well, James Conner fits that bucket. Alvin Kamara fits that bucket. So potentially we're talking about guys that we could pair together, right, on a fantasy roster. And ultimately by the end of the year, it works out where you use them both at the right time. Maybe you get lucky and they both just go crazy. You know, we never know for sure how fantasy is going to go, but I think that's the kind of thing you got to think about with a player like Omarion Hampton. And we do have to acknowledge there is a range of outcomes where he just takes over completely in Najee's dust. Like, it could happen. Yeah. Like, he could just be 70% of the backfield right away. So we can't, we can't, when you draft him, you can't completely count that out either. So it's just, that's the joy of fantasy football. It's having to think through.
Sorry, Kendall. I was just going to say, I mean, again, we love first-round running backs in fantasy football because it's a good sign they're getting a lot of touches. But we talked about Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. Like, these, even though they're not, you know, great for fantasy maybe this year, really smart, good, real-life picks. What was this pick? I thought Matthew Golden would have made a hell of a lot more sense on this Chargers team. Ladd McConkey is still your only wide receiver that's going to threaten defenses at all. You had Najee on the cheap. You had J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards there last year, also on the cheap. You're right, Kendall. I mean, they weren't a great rushing team, but I don't think that, you know, it was exactly, you know, their kryptonite of a season or anything like that. I mean, Omarion Hampton here at 22, just of me, all these first-round picks, one of the more puzzling ones out there.
I thought it was because the Broncos didn't take him that they said, "Hey, we're just going to snag." I thought Omarion Hampton was going to the Broncos. Then two picks later, they're like, "Well, he's here, and we didn't expect him to be." Because I thought it was going to be more of a, you know, day two, one of these other Caleb Johnson, Travion Henderson running backs, and then he's there, and that's why. Right now, I will say though, like, I think everyone thought that Omarion Hampton was going to the Broncos because right now on Underdog, this is all going to change after this weekend. We know that he was going off the board as RB13. He's going around James Cook, Chase Brown, Breece Hall, which that's not gonna stand. Yeah,
this is just a Harbaugh pick, man. Yeah. This is, hey, bring your lunch pail. We're gonna punch you in the face. Like, this guy. Seriously, I'm not even joking. That is what this is. This player fits like the style of football that they want to play. They want to establish the run. They want to.
Now they have two.
I get it, but but we all agree Najee's not someone you want long term. Like, he's a 1 year. He's a rental. I think they look at Omarion Hampton as being the guy that can do that for them in the future. I don't disagree, and the model still thinks like he's slightly overrated. That he's more of a second round pick than a first. So I think like Supermodel would be backing you up and saying, hey, you probably could have waited and got Quinshon Judkins in round 2, maybe take the wide receiver that you think gives you a vertical element to your game, to your point. But I think ultimately it just comes down to this is the guy that they thought brought the physicality as well as the potential big playability that maybe they think some of these other early down backs might not quite have that home run one hitter potential like what you get with Omarion Hampton.
Supermodel score again, RB2 over there. Same with Thor's rank, RB2 coming into this weekend. Want to remind you all at fantasylife.com. That's where you guys can check all of that out. And we've got an early bird promo code special going on right now. So if you were thinking about getting a Fantasy Life Plus package, now is the time to do it. 25% off right now. Fantasylife.com. You can use that code EARLY25, EARLY25, just in case you need a little bit of help. It's late right now to go and get 25% off your first year. Again, any Fantasy Life Plus subscription. So head over there. This ends April 27th. So you're going to just do it now while we're talking about it so you don't forget. Send it to all your friends, all your family. Early 25 over there at fantasylife.com where you can check all of that out. Let's continue on. Let's go over to Matthew Golden to the Packers. No, you're not listening to this the next day and thinking, no, that can't be right. They haven't done that since 2002, Dwayne. But they come in here and they say, you know what? We're gonna do it. We're gonna stick it to Aaron Rodgers. We're going to go get Matthew Golden, who, Dwayne, maybe is a little overrated. What do you think about this?
Well, I think you finally decided to do this, and you probably did it in the wrong year with wide receivers. But like, still, like hat tip, you're trying to do something here. When you look at Matthew Golden, the supermodel thinks he's a round 2 wide receiver. It says he should probably go around pick 40, 45 based on history. But like, it's not always right. Like the supermodel's based on percentages, but at the same time, there's always outliers to it. The thing with Golden is you're really buying into the film profile. So Lance Zierlein, gave him a grade of 6.42, which is an 83 on a rating of 50 to 100 in the supermodel. That's pretty good. 78 production rating, though, is not ideal. And so when you go back and you start comparing some of these players that had a production rating in his range that went between picks 15 and 32 in the first round of the NFL draft, you get a lot of names that we don't necessarily like, Kendall. We get the name Jalen Reagor. We get the name Jahan Dotson. We get the name Kadarius Toney. So those were guys that were all also thought of as prospects. The model saw them as reaches of about the same range as what we have with Golden. Now, having said that, like, I don't just want to crap all over the guy. Like, this is a guy that just went first round in the NFL draft, comes from the University of Texas. Like, they obviously like him. So I'm hoping that it works out. My gut says this is not a guy that suddenly turns into like a true alpha for you, where if the Packers are finally saying, we're done with having a bunch of guys that get 18 to 20% target share, I think you just drafted another guy that's going to be an 18 to 20% target share, but maybe he does give you that big play element that we're looking for, right? Maybe he is the guy that can open things up more for you, because Romeo Doubs, more of a possession guy, can win the contested catch. Christian Watson, he definitely had the big play ability, but just not able to really stay healthy. Dontavian Wicks, looks good on all the underlying metrics, and then makes me look bad, never can catch the football, so I don't know what to say about that. Jaden Reed really plays more from the slot, better as a guy you work intermediate, give him some carries and things like that. So I think from a complementary standpoint, like Golden is a good complement to Dobbs as well as what you have with Jaden Reed. So I think that's the thing that's most encouraging. Tucker Kraft also showed last year he can do some things when you leave him wide open underneath the coverage, and he can just run for like 20 yards at a time. So I don't hate the pick from stylistically the way it fits the team. I just think if the Packers think that they've got this guy that's going to turn into a 25, 27% target share guy that can be the centerpiece of their offense, like the supermodel would bet against that. I'm not saying it could never happen. He's just never done it. You're betting on a guy's film because he's never shown he can be that player in college.
I just get worried, Dwayne, because on the one hand, I can see us sitting here in December going, oh yeah, Matthew Golden, first round pick. No one in Green Bay is exactly scaring us away from targets. Why shouldn't we have assumed he would be the guy, 130 targets, late round gem? I can see that happening. I trust Jordan Love. I trust Matt LaFleur, even if I don't love, exactly what we're seeing out of Golden as a prospect. I mean, I know the Packers haven't drafted the first round wide receiver since 2002, but man, have they nailed a bunch of second round ones. All right. I think it's a smart organization. I want to be high on their players and everything. But on the other side of things, I mean, Jaden Reed, I thought it was pretty clear, was by far their best wide receiver last year. And how many times Sunday night were we complaining about him not getting enough reps? And it's not just Watson and Dobbs and Wicks. They like Bo Melton. They like Malik Heath getting some of this run as well. It's one of these rare teams that likes to rotate at times 5 or even 6 guys out there. I just can't help but wonder if we're going to be looking at almost an Indianapolis Colts situation, but in the NFC, higher ceiling passing for sure with Jordan Love. But man, like, I just wouldn't completely assume that we're going to see Matthew Golden out there with this 90% route rate from day one. He went round 1. He should be that guy. But man, Dwayne, if he isn't taking over quite as quick as we assume, splitting things with Wicks up early, I don't think Romeo Doubs should be playing ahead of him, but we didn't think Romeo Doubs should have been sticking around as long as he has, man.
Yeah, we don't know for sure. I mean, the one thing I gave Golden in the first round of projections is I did project him as the leading route participation player. Him 85%. So not like an elite number like in the 92, 95% range, but I've got him at 85%. Jaden Reed sitting there at 74, which is where he was last year. Romeo Doubs, I've got slightly down at an 80%. And then, like you mentioned, all those other guys they like to work in, like Wicks, Malik Heath, Bo Melton, they all get a little bit of playing time. So I think Golden, because of the draft capital, as long as he's not terrible in camp or in preseason, like he probably has the inside track to getting the most routes. I'll also say this. I think if I had to pick, is after all the things I said, like realizing that the supermodel could still be wrong, and they are an NFL team that just spent this first round pick on him, and that goes into the rating for the model, and that's ultimately what matters. Like, I think Matthew Golden is the first wide receiver we should be taking off the Packers at this point. I think I would take him over Jaden Reed just because I think there's this potential for him to play a lot more snaps, and he could surprise us. Maybe he does really live up to that film and suddenly, because I've only got him at a 19% targets per route run. That puts him at an 18% target share in a full season. But what if he was at 22? We like Jordan Love. We like their scheme. We like their ability to score touchdowns. So to your point, there's a lot of ways that it could go right. So I'll probably end up, after all of that, everything I said, I actually like Matthew Golden as a bet this year. Where I like Matthew Golden less, honestly, is as a long-term dynasty bet. I think this year, like, I'm willing to take a swing because my guess is a lot of people are not going to get too high on Matthew Golden. He probably is going to settle in that range of the draft last year where we saw Keon Coleman going, where we saw Xavier Legette going, some of those other guys that were late first round, early second round picks. I'm guessing that's where Golden lands. And if he's in that range, I think he's a guy that I'll want to have exposure to. If he suddenly steams up and people are like, oh no, we're going to take him, up here next to Tetairoa McMillan, that's going to be iffier. I like the situation more, but I think Tetairoa McMillan is just a much better prospect.
So I'm curious with you guys, like Ian, when we look at Green Bay, they were 20th in 2023 in team pass attempts per game. This past season, they were at the bottom. They was the Philadelphia Eagles, Baltimore Ravens, Green Bay Packers. So that's what I'm wondering. And then you look on the other side, you look at Josh Jacobs, you say 301 attempts over 1,300 yards. Like, does it even out now? Do you think like now Josh Jacobs has come out and said, hey, we need to get like this number one wide receiver, someone that can play like that? Do you think, wide receiver, we talked about it, but or QB, he's QB 13 right now in our rankings as well, Jordan Love is. So, where's the middle ground here?
I think those numbers were heavily skewed by Malik Willis coming in and them literally turning into the most run-heavy offense in the league. I got Dwayne's team style as one of the many cool features of the utilization report. One of the cool features you can get with our early bird special, by the way. And I mean, week 2, Dwayne, minus 25% drop back rate over expected for this team. So, I mean, they really were just pounding the rock. And kudos to LaFleur. Like, he made it work. They still had an effective offense. Malik Willis last year was wildly efficient as both a rusher and a passer. So that happened. But so I do think they're going to be a bit more of a, pass balance offense if we had to kind of go into the Madden playbook side of things. And accordingly, I do think there could be room for more than one pass catcher to put up, at least wide receiver 3 numbers. I don't see Golden having this leap into, a Ladd McConkey or a Brian Thomas Jr.-esque rookie season. But if he and Jaden Reed did finish his top 36 options, I wouldn't be the most shocked person in Lambeau.
Yeah,
right.
Jordan Love, like over his 3 years, Kendall, 58% drop back rate. He was also playing hurt, if you remember, a couple of stretches last year. Yeah. I'm not gonna say the name of the injury that he had, but it rhymes with the word coin because Ian will try to make fun of me.
It's 1:20 a.m. I need it.
If you look at Matt LaFleur over the last 3 years, like he's at a 57% drop back rate in his play calling. Last year, they were at 51%. So I've got them projected at 57%, which would be more of like, a balanced offense. But I think to Ian, like it was a little bit, and there was also some crazy game scripts where they just didn't have to throw the ball last year in the way that they worked out. So I think they get closer to the league average. Last year, the average was 60% drop back rate. So I've got them just slightly under that, but it's an efficient offense, right? It gives you a lot of big plays. There's going to be opportunities to score touchdowns. So I still think it's a positive passing offense, not a heavy passing offense. We're not going to get like the Bengals here, but it is one of those efficient offenses where, you could see in a really good season, Jordan Love throws 30 passing touchdowns. Like this is a guy that he has that kind of skill set.
QB13, fantasylife.com to check out some of those quarterback rankings. Obviously, they're going to be updated as the weeks go on. But like Ian said, early bird special as well. Early 25 is that code, 25% off Fantasy Life Plus subscriptions over there. Let's finish things out, guys. And I can't believe I'm saying let's finish things out with our instant reaction and talk about Jaxson Dart going to the Giants here. I mean, Ian, I thought when we heard that the Giants were going to make another move and they were trading with the Houston Texans, that they might be coming up for Shedeur Sanders. But no, you got Jaxson Dart, 25th pick in the 2025 NFL draft. And now you've got Jameis Winston, you've got Jaxson Dart, and the one and only Russell Wilson.
It was kind of funny watching the ESPN broadcast. I appreciate them not really tipping picks or just telling me the worst personal tragedy to happen to every single player after they got drafted. So kudos to you, ESPN, this year. But they showed Shedeur just chilling. They showed Jaxson just trying like to hide this massive smile like with his family. So it seemed pretty clear, at that moment in time. But I'm just kind of confused why, you use this first round pick, you trade up, and you just already shut down the possibility of a competition, because we did have Brian Dable already come out and say that Russ will be the starter, and their Joe Shoulder GM said there's no need to throw Dart out there. I'm assuming no pun intended. So with Jaxson Dart, again, he's someone who is very young, so maybe that's just kind of the crux of the idea here. And Russ and Jameis just on one-year deals, so don't want to completely throw him out there before he's not ready. We actually looking ahead to next year, he would be the youngest starter in the NFL if he gets the job by week 1, or really at any point, because him and JJ McCarthy, only quarterbacks that are still only going to be 22 years of age by the time things come around. So does have the big arm. And Dwayne, I think more importantly for fantasy, has that rushing upside that we look for. I mean, even including the sacks, taking out the rushing yards total, this guy averaged 499 rushing yards per season with 4 scores on the ground over these last 3 years at Ole Miss. So I think there's a lot of upside here. And I know, it's kind of varying opinions between should Shedeur be the QB2 and Thor's case QB1. But Jaxson Dart is someone where you just look at the tools and had to play in a bit of a, I would say QB friendly offense and what Lane Kiffin does over there at Ole Miss. But hey, when we're just looking for someone, do they have the arm strength to threaten defenses at pretty much every area of the field? And can they run the ball to kind of force them to also do that horizontally, cover every blade of grass, if you will? Jaxson Dart can do that. He's going to have Malik Neighbors. He's going to have Darius Slayton, who's solid, not quite Neighbors good. But hey, Neighbors, Slayton, and Wandale, there are a few worse wide receiver cores out there. I mean, with Neighbors propping you up, man, you can do some good things there. So not sure it's going to be, saving Brian Dable his job. But, man, you get your quarterback and you got Abdul Carter, number 3. Dwayne, as a Cowboys fan, man, I don't like what the Giants did tonight.
Yeah, 47 yards rushing per game in college. So I've got him projected for 30.9. He had a really strong scramble rate, also using the design run game and as a plus, there. So able to project him for, some yardage there on the design stuff as well, which you don't get with a lot of the quarterbacks. So he's one of these guys that could be like in that Bo Nix range, Ian, of what you could do as a rusher. I think the ceiling there is probably 400 or 500 yards, but you could easily get to 250 and you could punch in 3 or 4 rushing touchdowns. I actually do think that he ends up taking this job over this year, just because the Giants still have other things I got to work on. So right now I've got Russ projected for 8 starts and 9 for Jaxson Dart. I'm going to sleep on it, but I think Jaxson Dart takes over this. I know I didn't give Jameis Winston anything, but I think it's pretty clear signal at this point. Man, can we just let Jameis go somewhere else so he can go out and just, play YOLO? But,
yes. Yeah, there we go, Kendall.
Yeah, send it. That would be amazing. Jameis Winston with freaking George Pickens and DK Metcalf. Are you kidding me? Yes. We would literally, we would love that. Literally,
the stare downs that Mike Tomlin would give them. Oh my gosh. If you thought Sean Payton, Jameis, wait till Mike Tomlin.
Arthur Smith would not let him play, because Arthur Smith got pissed off at him because he thinks Jameis got him fired, but Arthur just also doesn't like the forward pass. But yeah, Jaxson Dart, man, range of outcomes on this guy. I think there's a chance that he's the number 1 dynasty quarterback from this class over Cam Ward. Obviously, you're taking Cam Ward. He's the first pick overall. He's guaranteed 3 years of a chance to show what he has for the Titans, just because they invested so much in him. Jaxson Dart, you go at the end of round 1, that's a big difference. But man, I think he has more rushing upside, than Cam Ward. You're going to get him later, in your dynasty draft. So I really like Jaxson Dart. I got him projected for 17.4 fantasy points per game. That's more than I've got Russell Wilson for the Giants. So I like Jaxson Dart. And I think he probably takes over as a starter by midseason, unless the Giants somehow surprise us and they're winning a bunch of games and they decide to stay with Russ as a game manager.
Sure, that could happen, I guess. But he did average 0.24 missed tackles per run, second best rate in the class. I guess my only question, Dwayne, because I know when we talked with Thor and we did the podcast a couple weeks ago, the one thing that he didn't like was the system that Jaxson Dart played in. But I guess if you have him sitting for a few games, you think that he can learn that NFL playbook, because he does have the statistical profile and the physical tools like you talked about. But how much does that come into consideration at all with the program at Ole Miss?
Yeah, I mean, grading that scheme is hard no matter what position you're trying to grade. The wide receivers, I mean, Trey Harris, people run into some of the same things there. It happens also with the quarterbacks. But at the same time, like Jaxson Dart he's much better, like statistically, than Matt Corral, who was the last guy to come out of that system. He obviously didn't go in the first round of an NFL draft. So I think we do have people we can compare him to. He's, like Ian said, he's also very young. So yeah. I do get it. I think anytime you come from a scheme like that does those sort of things, you do have to wonder, like, can they translate to the next level? But the Giants obviously saw enough. They put that late first round capital on him. So I think at this point, he should be the number 2 quarterback, obviously off the board in dynasty drafts. I think, like I said, I think he potentially has the most upside because of the rushing. And again, like, we've got a new we got a new tool that'll be coming out. I can't really talk about it, guys, but it'll be hitting, and it's around our ceiling and floor projections. And essentially we went in and we looked at, like, what are all the how much variance are in each one of the stats that ultimately make up fantasy points for all the different positions. And then we bucketed those things by how good the players were, and did that impact variance and all those sort of things. And we've known all along, right, that the Konami code, the ability as a rusher is huge, but man, just how easy it is to get to a ceiling performance, with a guy that can run for 25, 35 rushing yards per game. You don't even have to be the guy getting 55. It's just such a huge advantage in fantasy. And so, for example, you have someone like Joe Burrow that's an elite passer. You can have someone like Jaxson Dart come in and be like a 230-yard passer, but if he rushes for 40 yards per game, like, he gives you similar spike weeks to what you get from Joe Burrow. We're not saying he's going to score those same exact points for the year. So I just think there's a lot to like about him because of the rushing profile. I understand Thor's concerns around the scheme, but at this point, the Giants took him at the end of round 1, and that's what I care about the most.
All right, Jaxson Dart, pick 25 over to the Giants. Before we wrap things up, guys, I know it's late. Appreciate, again, everyone hanging out with us here. Ian, I want to know just a couple of your favorite names that you're watching for tomorrow. I know today was a big day, but for fantasy football purposes, we got a lot of guys that we're going to keep our eye on tomorrow.
Yeah, first of all, speaking of that Konami code, Jalen Milroe is looking like the best rushing quarterback coming out since literally Lamar Jackson. That's not even an exaggeration, some of the things he was able to do at Alabama. So Cleveland obviously got that second pick. And hey, if we do see Jalen Milroe land on the Browns, I mean, that could be, the single best depth chart to actually think that he could get some starts in year 1. Pittsburgh Steelers are 2 sitting right there. So where Jalen Milroe lands, if he actually does have a chance to start, man, I've made worse quarterback bets in fantasy over the years, guys. Jalen Milroe will be on a lot of rosters if that ends up happening. Then also these Ohio State running backs. I mean, we still have teams like the Dallas Cowboys who did not go to that well. The Denver Broncos, 2 of the spots that we really were holding out for this very position. Still have some very talented backs, some talented backs that a lot of people thought could have even gone before Hampton in the first place. So curious to see who's going to be the Cowboys and the Broncos running backs and what happens to Mr. Milroe.
There we go. Dwayne, any other names that you want to mention here?
Oh, it's all about the running backs. Obviously, there's Luther Burden as well, Jaden Higgins. I mean, there's a bunch of good names, but the running backs, the strength of this, yes, Cam Scatabo, the strength of this running back class was really this next tier, which we said really were more day 2 players, round 2, round 3 picks. But this is where the strength of that class is, and we have plenty of landing spots still open where we have guys that could be taking over backfield. So I think we're going to get a lot of juicy stuff tomorrow.
And we're going to be right here with you guys. Again, instant reactions. So make sure you keep it locked. Fantasy Life on Twitter, on Instagram, everywhere you follow us. And then, of course, at fantasylife.com. One last reminder until tomorrow, fantasylife.com to go use that early bird special promo code early25, 25% off Fantasy Life Plus subscriptions for a year. So make sure you go over there. This ends April 27th, early 25 for that code, 25% off. Appreciate everyone hanging out with us today, tonight, wherever you are. We're going to see you tomorrow.